Hey everybody, welcome back to the BROOM wagon, soon to be referred to as the Froome wagon. Just kidding. At least until this Salbutamol case is adjudicated, which who knows when that's going to be. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Tour de Suisse, Route du Sud, formerly called the Route du Sud, Tour of Slovenia, and the OVO Energy Women's Tour. Neutral Zone News, MUSETTE Musings, and of course, the tweet of the week, all of that on the Froome wagon. All right, everybody, Tour de Suisse, over and done with. And let me just say, I have a sweet spot in my heart for the Tour de Suisse. Team 711 with Andy Hampson came up with the goods against the Euroschlugs in 1987. Andy had won the race the year before on the Sky Team of the Times, La Vie Claire, the team with Greg LeMond, Bernard Hinault, Steve Bauer, amongst many other superstars. Andy won the Tour de Suisse the previous year. And so the question mark was, could the ragtag lunatics from the 7-Eleven team actually produce the goods in one of the toughest stage races on earth, the Tour of Switzerland? The answer was yes.
Panasonic has no other chance except winning. So they're going to help control the race at the front because they're not going to let Parla go, they're not going to let Giovanetti go, they're not going to let anybody go except Raul winning because they're going to try and get their second as we're coming into Zurich. And it might get really rough in this first sprint, it might get really rough at that point. So Bob, you need to be the policeman for Andy and be right with them and don't take any crap from anybody. And make it known, you know, that we're not going to get boxed in and boxed out. And we're going to protect Andy to the fullest.
If anybody tries to get rough with Andy, then we're not going to stand for it as a team, and especially myself.
All right, dog. Let me have it, Dad. Yeah. Great, buddy. Good job, Andy. I'm going to have some.
And I think somewhere in the internet there's footage of that edition, so I recommend you look that up. The good from the Tour de Suisse, Richie Porte. I was a little bit surprised to find out that this was Richie Porte's first participation in the Tour de Suisse, and he comes up with the win. Solid performance, not spectacular, not overpowering, and he won, let's be honest, because of the time trials, and much better at time trialing than Nairo Quintana and the team time trial. The damage in the team time trial, 33 seconds to Nairo's team Movistar, and 1:18 to Astana, which is pretty huge when you consider Jakob Fuglsang was second in the overall standings, 1 minute and 2 seconds behind Richie Porte in the final at the end of the Tour de Suisse. And while it's maybe not 100% accurate to determine who's going to dominate the team time trial in the Tour de France, based on the Dauphiné and the Tour de Suisse, it can pretty much be assumed that Jakob is going to be on the back foot after the team time trial, Astana getting annihilated, and I don't see them improving exponentially between now and stage number 3 of this year's Tour de France. So that's got to be pretty discouraging for Jakob Fuglsang. How is he going to find 1:18 or more after the team time trial against Richie Porte and Chris Froome, etc.? And they lost a lot of time to Movistar also, so that's going to be tough to come up with. Richie against Nairo, 33 seconds in the team time trial, 55 seconds in the individual time trial. So that's 1:28. Nairo was third at 1:12. We do the math. Nairo better in the mountains. And to be honest, this Tour de Suisse was not as mountainous as many editions have been in the past. So because of those things, not a crushing win by Richie Porte, but solid all the way through. The team was phenomenal. And we'll get to some more of the good from the team in a moment. But be that as it may, Richie Porte, a great result from the Tour de Suisse. Does that mean he's going to beat the preemptive favorite of the Tour de France in the Tour, Chris Froome? No. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But it does mean he's in great shape, and will be a contender for a podium spot in the Tour. Amongst the sprinters, Sagan got a stage win. Sonny Colbrelli beat the sprinters. A little bit surprised about that. Does that mean Sonny Colbrelli is going to win Tour stages? No, it's not quite within his grasp. I do not believe. There could be an exceptional circumstance, especially if it's pouring rain throughout the day and some of the other top sprinters crash. But very nice for Colbrelli to get a stage win in the Tour de Suisse. But when we think about the field of sprinters at the Tour de France, it's absolutely spectacular. Maybe the best of all time. Marcel Kittel, Mark Cavendish, Sagan, Greipel, Groenewegen, Caleb Ewan, Nasser Bouhanni, Arnaud Démare. Démare, by the way, getting a stage win in the Tour de Suisse also. And Fernando Gaviria, my pre-race up until now, favorite to win the most stages amongst the sprinters. I'm not quite ready to concede that yet. I think he'll get the most wins of any sprinters, but it could honestly be just 2, and all the other sprinters get 1. But Gaviria, no stage wins in the Tour de Suisse, and we'll see how that plays out in the Tour de France. They are gunning for Gaviria to get stage wins, the Quick Step squad. So I think he might have just gone off the boil a little bit for the Tour of Switzerland and will be absolutely flying in the Tour de France. TJ Van Garderen in the Tour of Switzerland was very solid. 3rd in the individual time trial, and that's after a very tough stage race. And also working for Richie Porte, keeping him in the right position, doing the team job. So TJ on very good form. And I think he would be a super teammate for Richie Porte in the Tour de France. We'll see if he's taken to compete in the Tour. I would recommend that they do, because the team time trial, TJ absolutely critical. And once before, TJ raced for another Australian as a Super Domestique Deluxe. That was the 2012 Tour. Cadel Evans had won the Tour in 2011, came in as defending champion. And TJ was there to help Cadel throughout the Tour, and TJ wound up 5th. And Cadel wound up 7th. So it'll be interesting to see if BMC takes TJ, and if they don't, that's going to be a big storyline depending on what happens during the race. I recommend that they do the bad. Mikel Landa, not fabulous in the Tour de Suisse, and Movistar looking to bring 3 leaders to the Tour de France. Alejandro Valverde, we'll get to him in a second. Of course, Nairo Quintana, also the good with the big stage win in the mountains. And Mikel Landa. But Mikel Landa, I thought, would have been much more competitive in the Tour of Switzerland. Only 17th in the overall standings, and no spectacular days that you write home about in the mountain stages. Like I said, the jury is out on that still a long ways to the Tour de France, but time will tell whether or not Landa is not riding as well this year for Movistar as he did last year for Team Sky, when he was maybe the strongest rider in the field in the last few days of the mountains, but was working for Froome and still wound up 4th in last year's Tour. Route du Sud. Route du Sud is now called the Route Occitane, and Alejandro Valverde. Big stage win. So Valverde's on good form. Quintana's on good form. Landa, maybe not so much. But in the MUSETTE Musings, we'll get to the 3-headed monster Movistar plans to bring to the Tour. Tour of Slovenia wrapped up. I'm going to continue to research the pronunciation of this man's name, because I think we're going to be talking a lot about him. He's the co-leader in GC for the Lotto Jumbo squad. Primož Roglic, I think, is the pronunciation. If you're Slovenian, call right into the comment section and maybe spell it out phonetically so I can get a handle on it. Very mountainous. Time trial also staged in the Tour of Slovenia, and Roglic, the overall winner, beat Rigoberto Urán, who finished 2nd. Rigo last year, 2nd in the Tour de France. So riding well. Will Rigo race as well this year in the Tour de France as last year? That is going to be a tall order. I'm going to say off the podium, outside of the podium for Rigoberto Urán, just because of how challenging the first 9 days of the Tour are. And stage number 9, the cobbles. It's going to absolutely demolish some of the I don't know, how would you call it, versatile GC riders, the pure climbers. But Rigo is in good form, and it'll be interesting to see him race in the Tour de France. And it will give something for the EF team, give something for them to work for throughout the 3 weeks. Not great in Slovenia. Mark Cavendish, no stage wins. Admittedly slowed by a crash on the first sprint stage, so I'm not writing him off just yet. I'm going to predict that Mark Cavendish will win a stage of the Tour de France, maybe even 2. Every time I write him off, he punishes me in the results column. So watch for Cav to get multiple stage wins in this year's Tour. You heard it here first. Go to the comment section. Be careful, but make some predictions about how Cavendish is going to do during this year's Tour. It's going to be a great, like I mentioned, great stages for the sprinters. Corinne Rivera, winner in the GC, plus a stage win in the OVO Energy Women's Tour in England. And sprinters don't oftentimes win multiple stage races, but Corinne Rivera proving herself to be not just a pure sprinter, but also a very versatile rider for the Sunweb team, and comes up with a hard-fought and quite remarkable GC win in a stage race. Also, a shout out to Danny Rowe. Hard crash and did not drop out. Was able to soldier on to the finish line and finish 3rd on the podium. So I love watching the women race. And Corinne Rivera from the United States, if the American men could race as well on the international stage as the American women, we have a lot to be hopeful for and a lot to cheer for. So come on, guys. Let's get a move on. It's time. Time is now. Let's get some stage wins, some classics, and some stage race wins. All right, everybody. Next up, the Neutral Zone News. Okie dokie, everybody. Up in the Neutral Zone News, some bad news coming to us from the Pyrenees. The descent off of the Col d'Aubisque washed out by mudslides, torrential rains in the Pyrenees recently, and the Aubisque, the very last climb, categorized climb in this year's Tour de France, and the descent to the finishing town completely demolished. Take a gander at that. Unlikely it will be fixed in time for the Tour de France's passage off of the Aubisque. So that's a real shame. They're looking for alternate routes, maybe finish the stage at the top of the Aubisque. We'll continue to follow this story leading up to and definitely during the Tour de France. That stage, classic stage in the Pyrenees, and one of the most beautiful stages in all of professional cycling. Col d'Espagne, the Tourmalet, and the Aubisque in rapid succession. The stage was to be 200 kilometers even. Last day in the mountains, like I said, and hopefully they can find an alternate route and use those climbs during the Tour. It's a big part of the overall Yellow Jersey race is stage number 19. Time trial the next day, and then of course the procession into Paris. But stage 19, it would be a shame if they can't find an alternate route. Time will tell. We'll be following that throughout the Tour. No Thibaut Pinot for this year's Tour de France. He has not yet recovered from his pneumonia incurred during the Giro d'Italia, chasing Chris Froome all over the mountains of the Tour of Italy, and Thibaut Pinot dropping out of the Tour de France already, not recuperated yet. If we recall, Thibaut Pinot started the last day in the mountains, 3rd in the overall standings, just 1 day to go before the end of the race, and was unable to finish. He lost 45 minutes on that stage and went straight to the emergency room, checked in, and had to drop out of the Giro on the last day, even though he finished the last mountain stage. But a real shame that the French fans won't have Thibaut Pinot to cheer for, one of the French stars, along with Romain Bardet, capable of winning the Tour de France, presumably, but not in 2018. And Thibaut Pinot said he doesn't get through the full 3 weeks of racing without being sick at one point or another. And it reminds us how remarkable it is of guys, the GC contenders, that can do that, that can be consistently strong for that many days in a row. Really amazing. But Thibaut Pinot, I'm going to miss Thibaut Pinot not being at the race. Very classy rider, great climber, not spectacular against the clock, although he's had decent results over the years in the time trial. But hopefully he recovers well, and there is a very mountainous World Championships upcoming. Maybe salvage a little bit from his season. Best of luck to Thibaut Pinot in his recuperation. Damiano Cunego, Il Piccolo Principe, retiring from cycling, 17 years as a pro. I think if you look at the last few years in his professional career, he might not have been a professional for that many years if he had not won the Giro in his second year as a pro, going back to 2004. 2004, Cunego won the Giro. Oh my God, it's like a different lifetime. 4 stage wins that year, and his career never lived up to the hype generated by being a new pro, basically, and winning the Giro. The promise was he'd go on to be a dominant force in professional cycling, and that never happened. I always appreciated Cunego. The way he raced that Giro was spectacular. He's going to start a training center in Lugano, Switzerland, so presumably he'll be training riders how to be better cyclists. And if you're interested in that, look up Damiano Cunego in Lugano in the years to come. And Lugano, by the way, one of the most beautiful places on earth to ride a bike. All right, everybody, next up, the MUSETTE Musings. Alrighty, everybody, up in the MUSETTE Musings, Chris Froome, his legal team back in the headlines as Chris Froome's Salbutamol case marches ever so slowly along. Why are we 9 months since the infraction and no resolution? Perhaps the 1,500-page document that Froome's legal team has handed the UCI might be a reason. Chris Froome said, "No, I'll quote him, nobody wants this case resolved more quickly than I do." Perhaps instruct your legal team to give the UCI its cliff notes. Just get to the point. Don't have the UCI wade through 1,500 pages of documentation. And what might be said in that? What kind of defense are you offering up? A report has just come out. Now, this report has not been confirmed by Sky, by the UCI, by any of the principal people in this, but it has been reported in Cycling Weekly that one of Chris Froome's defenses is based on a research paper that has stated WADA's salbutamol test is not accurate. And the research cited for this paper being used by Chris Froome's legal team, if you believe the report, the experiments apparently were carried out on dogs, not people. The WADA has said that they are confident in the 20 years of actual scientific research based on humans through which they've arrived at their salbutamol protocol. So who do you believe? This research team, I believe they're from Denmark. I believe I mentioned them earlier And they found in one research paper that they published, EPO doesn't help you race bikes more quickly. So if you do the math, I think you might find it hard to believe that a research paper based on experiments on dogs could be as accurate as what WADA, World Anti-Doping Authority, has in place. But more important to our cycling's understanding of this case is the transparency that Sky came into being, professing, has always stated all the way through the Jiffy bag, the cortisone, the testosterone deliveries, all the Tramadol, the transparency, which obviously has never been a part of Team Sky. We only know about this because of leaks through Fancy Bears, all of the controversies, and some of the research from British Parliament. We don't know about any of that because of the transparency at Team Sky. And this 1,500-page document is another example of that. And if they were committed to transparency, why not tell us, why not publish what's in there? And while they're at it, why don't they publish the anti-doping test results for their riders, or their blood values, or their own internal anti-doping mechanism, which is the reason they have cited that they do not belong to the MPCC. All of those, to me, legitimate questions, and time will tell. Tell us, please, Team Sky. Otherwise, it's hard to believe that you guys are 100% transparent. It's hard to believe Team Sky is committed to transparency when you look at their behavior. So, go to the comments section. Let me know what you think. I appreciate that people have given their opinion without any of the acrimonious language that's sometimes attached to the comments. And the comment section, it's becoming less and less, it's becoming more difficult to keep it clean the more controversial the subject matter is that I talk about. But so far it's manageable, and I appreciate all of the comments. Good or bad, agree or disagree, just use some reasonable language. Tramadol, also in the news. WADA has found that cycling is quote-unquote rife with Tramadol abuse compared to other endurance sports, which this latest report is not, to me, a very accurate depiction of the landscape in professional cycling. When you think about the crashes that guys go through and having to race the next day, it's understandable that some Tramadol will be used. And to be honest with you, the percentage was actually, in my way of thinking, considering the rigors of the sport, an indication that Tramadol is not being as abused as the headlines would suggest. On some teams, it's a little bit different. But let me just focus on the 7 teams out of 18 in the World Tour that are members of the MPCC, the Movement for Credibility in Professional Cycling. AG2R, Bora, Dimension Data, Education First, FDJ, Lada Sudal, and Sunweb. Those are the teams that are in the MPCC where Tramadol is a banned substance. If you belong to the MPCC, your riders are not allowed to use it. By the way, all the teams, all the French teams in the Tour de France, including the pro continental level teams, Cofidis, Direct Energy, Fortunato, they are also all in the MPCC. So along with AG2R and FDJ, all the French teams in the MPCC, and the teams that are in there should be commended. We would not be here with Froome if Team Sky was still in the MPCC. Because if you're under investigation for any doping infraction, you're not allowed to race. So Chris Froome would not have done the early season races. He might not have even done, way back in September, the World Time Trialing Championships, the individual ones, where he was notified that morning of his elevated salbutamol in his urine from stage 18 of the Vuelta. He would not have done the early season or not have just won the Tour of Italy. So Team Sky can join NPCC anytime for the benefit of the sport. But thus far, they don't want to do that because they have such a vigorous and far-reaching and much more significant anti-doping mission and process in place on Team Sky. If you believe that, I'm not sure what evidence you would use to believe that, but if so, please explain why. Please explain why. What has Sky done to reassure us that they go above and beyond the MPCC requirements? And that's why they don't belong in the comment section. Okay, everybody, next up, the tweet of the week. Tweet of the week, Tom Squeens. This is a good one. Dinner is ready in 30 minutes, but the forks are not ready for another hour. They're being cleaned. What am I supposed to do? Eat my salad with a spoon. That's a good one. I've been at many never-ending dinner. I mean, when I think about it now, how hungry you are, and any sort of delay is so aggravating when you're a professional cyclist. You are so famished when you sit down to the dinner table. And I've been in many a situation where the hotel where you're staying, their kitchen isn't ready, and they have a litany of excuses, and you're there with a number of teams, and you see the order in which the teams get served, and it just drives you absolutely bonkers. Oh, I think some of the most enraged I've ever been is when I'm hangry and the food just won't come out of the kitchen. Oh my God. So when the teams have their own chef and their own facilities, like the Tour de France, they're generally not a problem. But in a lot of other races, I cannot believe that's still a problem in professional cycling. Can you imagine if the Formula One drivers were unable to eat when they sat down to their meal? Or the soccer players? I mean, maybe it happens. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any professional soccer players out there, please go to the comment section and let me know. That's it for this week. Tour de France is coming up. Season is on fire. Gotta love the bike racing season. If you don't love it, you don't need to tune in to BobkeTV. But thank you to everybody who has.